This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we have an awesome guest. He's a contributor at JWB Fantasy Football and Dynasty League Football. It's Daddy's home himself. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Hey, it's an honor to have you. I always love seeing you at the expo and whatnot, and I love your presence in the fantasy community. So it's a pleasure to have you here, man.
Yeah, it's a fun place to be. I got to be honest. Like, I never expected to be here. Never expected to be doing this, but it's kind of stoked to be here. Talking to people like you is always fun. Makes the day a little brighter, you know.
That's true. I love the people in this community, and yeah, I'm with you. It's just it's a surprise, definitely not something that you kind of picture, back in the day that you're gonna meet all these people online and get connected. But here we are, and it's been fun. Take me back to where it all began for you. Like, have you always been a big sports fan?
Yeah, definitely always been a sports fan. Growing up in Boston, you're kind of born into it. You don't really have much of a choice, right? You cheer for the Big Four. It's what we do, and for me, it started early and painful. I think growing up in the early years in Boston, we had the Celtics and Bruins at times. But being a Red Sox and a Patriots fan was very similar to getting kicked in the shins like over and over again. It was a rough place to be for a while, and then obviously growing up, we grew up in the golden age of Boston sports. But those early years kind of hardened you and made you appreciate the good years to come.
Oh, for sure. Now that makes all the sense in the world. Like, you kind of experience the worst before you have a run like, I mean, obviously the Patriots. I mean, what a run that's been, and you're right, breaking the curse. I mean, that's as big as anything for the Red Sox. So cool to be a part of that. I mean, I don't know how you couldn't grow up in that environment and not be a passionate sports fan. So I love it. So what were some of your favorite memories when it comes to like big sports moments? Like, what's your favorite sports moment of all time?
Oh, it is easily the 2004 World Series. Like, nothing will ever top breaking the curse. Like you said, possibly one of the biggest stories in sports history. The way they did it, coming down to that Game 7 against the Yankees, the Dave Roberts steal, then going into the World Series, that almost became like an afterthought, like because of the Yankee series. But those games at the time, like, you just lived and died with those. And as much as I loved all of the Patriots Super Bowls, I mean, obviously the Rams one, upsetting the greatest show on turf, was amazing. Nothing will ever beat for me that 2004 World Series. That was life-changing for Boston sports fans. Like, that was probably the only time that we all kind of unified in Boston and didn't hate each other for like 5 minutes and actually learned to enjoy life, which is not overly common up here in the Northeast. So
I love it. So who were some of your favorite players growing up, like on all the sports teams?
yeah, growing up for me, it was always kind of underdog cheering. I was a big fan of Ellis Burks in baseball. Like, he was my
Yeah.
guy. I actually met him at the IHOP in Revere, like way back in the day. Great dude. So cheered for him throughout. Actually, believe it or not, I know everyone's a ton, but I was a huge Drew Bledsoe fan. Like, Drew
Okay.
Bledsoe to me was like, he first represented some hope for the Patriots. To the arm talent, the way he carried himself was huge. And then really the entire Bruins franchise, I just love the way they carry themselves, like just tough guy attitudes, really just, the vibe of the city, believe it or not, like there's this underground Bruins camp that people really vibe with. I know we talk about the Patriots winning, but Bruins fans are absolutely diehard, and we go to bat for that team. Pasternak and Tuukka Rask was there for a while. We had Tim Thomas make that incredible run. Patrice Bergeron just wrapped up an incredible career. I mean, we've had some great players in and out of town. But yeah, all my favorites, they have to be from Boston. That's just how we do it here.
I love it. Yeah, growing up in Seattle, it's funny. My brother, like, it was 85 or whatnot, and he, like, he adopted Wade Boggs as his like favorite player. So he basically, his whole life, like, childhood was Boston Red Sox. And
Oh, I
we're in
love it.
Seattle, and it's like this guy, like, we're collecting baseball cards. I got everybody, right? I love every player, and we got Griffey coming along, and he seriously has binders and binders and binders of just Wade Boggs. Like that's all he collected. So it's pretty funny to hear, names like Ellis Burks and, I can think of like Mike Greenwell and like those guys, right? Like that's good. That's good stuff. Yeah, and then again with Bledsoe, I'm again Washington guy, so very familiar with him at Washington State and all the talent in the world. Phenomenal football player. So I was shocked when Brady took over, and I'm like, who is this guy, right? So obviously he's somebody. So
Yeah, I think everyone's revisionist history is that we saw Brady and we were so happy Bledsoe went down. That's absolutely not how it went. And in fact, people forget that Bledsoe is actually the reason why we beat Pittsburgh in the playoffs. Brady got hurt that year, and Bledsoe came in off the bench and knocked out the Steelers. And realistically, we didn't know going into that second season after the Mo Lewis hit who was going to be the starter. There was a lot of whispers that Bledsoe was going to come back and that Brady was a flash in the pan. The defense won. There was checkdowns to J.R. Redmond. Like everyone wants to say like, oh, once Brady got here, like, the seas parted and he just walked in like a god. That's not how it went down. And there were this town was actually split at the time on who should start the next year. And a lot of us were just waiting for Brady to flop so that Bledsoe could get back into the fold. And that not happening was probably the biggest surprise. And then obviously Brady bowled himself to the greatest ever. So thankfully I wasn't making the call at the time, or things would have been incredibly different and completely wrong. But, in that moment, a lot of people thought that Brady was a game manager, that it was Charlie Weiss who was actually calling the shots, and that's why we won. And once you get the strong arm Bledsoe back in the game, we can build off of the structure. Very similar to what people were thinking about Brock Purdy. Very similar to what people are, always think about those late round talents, and obviously it worked out great the way it did. So
it's true. I mean, not everything is going to be measured on physical traits and whatnot, strongest arms and that kind of stuff. I would, whenever I need to humble myself, I think back to 2001, and I think, when the Patriots won, I said to many people, especially chatter in my fantasy football leagues, that's the worst team that's ever won a Super Bowl, and that's the worst quarterback, maybe Trent Dilfer, that's ever won a Super Bowl. So obviously, you could have bad takes at times, and that's one whenever I need to reel myself in, I go back to that, because that it's pretty awful if I think about it.
yeah, you weren't alone. I mean, at that time, you weren't alone. I don't think Brady was throwing the ball much past 15 yards at that point. It was literally check down to check down, game management to a T, and Belichick's defense. And to think of what it became, obviously, and where we landed was amazing. But at the time, you were certainly not alone with that take.
and I was like, that team's not making the playoffs the next year, and they didn't. And then it was fantasy where I the following season I picked up the Patriots defense just on a whim, and they won the championship for me. And so I'm like, wow, okay, this team is legit. This defense is legit. Belichick's legit. Brady's solid. And so for the rest, since then I've had a ton of respect. I wasn't happy though when I went to the Super Bowl and I watched my Seahawks lose to the Patriots, but I always tell myself, well, I got to watch Brady win a Super Bowl. So
yeah, and you saw one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time, which is amazing. I mean, what a great game.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when did you discover fantasy sports and fantasy football?
Oh, I started playing fantasy football when I was 8. Me and my dad have partnered in a league for decades now, still do. And he brought me into a league with his friends. It was great. They'd all drink beer. I'd have a Capri Sun, and we would do the old, it was the old pen and paper leagues. And I believe my first draft pick was Steve Young, nice. And Jerry Rice, I see behind you, was my stack at that point. That was back in the days when one quarterback league, still the entire first round was quarterbacks. It's just what we did, and the scoring system made it that way because either you got 100 yards or you got 0 or you got a touchdown. So it was very much the old school style. And we spun off a league from that has still today become our Dynasty league. He and I share a team. I've never gone solo with it. And that's really how I got my start, and then kind of took off from there. Got some of my friends into it. We got into Dynasty super early. I want to say like 2007, 2008, Dynasty, which back then everything was redraft, actually maybe before, now that I think of it. But Yeah, I have two really long running leagues that I love. Like they're obviously the ones you live and die with, no matter how much fun we have in these analyst leagues or these charity leagues. Like those are the leagues that make or break my season for me every time.
Nice. You got to have those home leagues for sure. Now, do you remember like the content you consumed back in the day, like who you were following, who you looked up to in the industry, or did you just kind of like go off on your own?
So I did a lot of the magazines, Cliff Charpentier's books from back in the day. I used to read those pretty regularly. There was Grogan's Guide back in the day where I'd be looking at people coming in from the draft. So it was early days internet. Then obviously you find Matthew Berry, you find the guys on CBS who now I've been lucky enough to work with some of them on different projects, which is still kind of earth shattering to me. But that was pretty much it. I tried to do a lot of my own thinking because I was trying to go against the grain. My theory was back then the pool was so shallow of information that if you could somehow consume it but then pivot from it, you had a distinct advantage. But this is the day, and I think Kevin, some folks probably don't remember this, but your stuff wasn't updated. So I mean, you were drafting guys that were getting cut or that were in the CFL because the magazine came out in like June, right?
Yeah.
And if you weren't paying attention, there were some major changes that you would miss. So I'd consume it mostly for entertainment purposes. I find Matthew Berry's writing to be incredibly entertaining. So I like reading it just for the reading's sake. I think I actually like more of the George Carlin takes than the football takes. I find that stuff fascinating. Not that his football
Yeah.
takes are bad, but you know what I mean. It's an entertaining read.
Sure.
But from a data perspective, I've always tried to dive in and watch as much as I could and try to predict against what the consensus is going for, because I always think that's the way you win leagues.
Nice, nice. Now, what is it about the fantasy experience that you love the most?
It's the people. For me, I have such a blast just talking football with people. Like me and Cooter, and I saw her interview that you did with her, and I think she brought this up as well. Like we always made an agreement that if it's not fun, we won't do it anymore. Like we would keep ourselves honest. Like if it was a grind, if it was painful, if it was detrimental in any way, we would both cut and run. And it's never gotten that way from me. Like I get very little trolling, I get very little hate. I just get a lot of people that want to talk football from all different areas. And for me, that's amazing. I mean, doing Sirius XM and getting phone calls from across the country for start sit advice, talking just ball with good people is my favorite part. Like who doesn't like talking football and who doesn't like talking to good people? And I get to do both on a pretty regular basis, just like now.
Nice, nice. Now with those home leagues you mentioned, do you guys do live drafts?
We do, yeah. They've been dwindling down a little bit lately with COVID, trying to bring them back up, but that had always been the staple. What we do is with pickups, for example, waiver claims. After our first 15, we charge people $10 per pickup. And the reason why we do that is because then we just throw a party with it. Like it's not that anybody
Yeah.
wins the money, it doesn't extend the pot, but that pays for the beer, that pays for the food, and depending on how wild people got in the waivers would depend on what our spread looked like. But that's how we financed all of our drafts. And we go to the same bar, same bartenders there. Like we've been going to the same place now for 15 years. They know we're coming. The wings are ready, the pizza's ready, the beer's ready, and obviously the trash talk starts flowing the second the first pick comes off the board.
That's awesome. I mean, to me, that's what it's all about. Is that that league experience, the traditions. I like the fact that you brought up the point about like raising finances in fantasy leagues because you want to have a good time, you want to have fun, but someone's got to pay for it, right? So that's a creative way to do it. I like that. I like that. And I'm sure it just fuels the experience and the rivalries and all the fun that fantasy has to offer. Now, do you guys do any last place punishments at all?
We don't. No, most of ours is really like in season. I make trash talk videos. There'll be a
Yeah.
lot of, phone calls and stuff like that. So it's continuous pain for our league. Like we live and die on a weekly basis. So the championship is funny because it's obviously hugely important and it's a major trash talk event, but it's more that push to the playoffs where the trash talk really ramps up because you have all the teams involved. Like everybody's still in it. Everyone's still at the height of paying attention.
Yeah.
So that's really where the pain sets in is there's all that kind of trash talk during the season. So the punishments are kind of ongoing rather than a finality type thing.
Okay. Now, do you have a big rivalry, like your biggest rivalry in fantasy, where it's like, if you win, it's everything, and if you lose, it's just devastating? Is there one person out there that you want to beat the most?
Yeah, so I guess, in my home league, it's always been the commissioner. Like he and I go back and forth. We're probably the most hardcore in the industry. It's without question Brian McDowell. He and I play in a ton of leagues together, and we have such a different style that we're constantly making moves. Like I don't think there's a trade deadline that goes, or any point during the year when you're getting towards the playoffs where I'm not getting texts from Ryan. And he's like, what are we going to do? We have to make a move here. Where are we going to go? And he's looking to get younger and build that longevity. I'm such a hardcore, like, I'm going to win now and I'll, spend all my money. I'll worry about it tomorrow. It'll grow back type thing. So seeing that dichotomy of styles and seeing who comes out on top is always the most fun for me. And I'd say it's probably about 50-50 at this point, with me and him, and kind of who comes out on top. But there's always activity. We did, I want to say, a 2-hour podcast just talking about our trades from that past season. That's how
Wow.
much volume had happened, and that's how different of styles we are. So it's a friendly rivalry. Ryan's one of my favorite people, one of my best friends. But it's definitely something that he and I interact quite a bit, and he's the person in the industry leagues that I go after the most, I'd say.
I love it. That's good. That's great. Do you have favorite settings, formats in fantasy that you love to play?
Yeah, so for the settings and time in terms of scoring, I am a big fan of first downs. I like having those little extras. I like the tight end premium. I really like boosting up that position because it is such a crapshoot, and so wild right now. That tight end premium swings leagues so considerably that I just find that fun. In terms of settings, the biggest thing for me is always trying to find something that's going to boost activity. So I like vampire leagues. I like contract leagues. So I like when people are coming up to a point where you're going to lose a player, so you have to make a move. Anything that's going to spur trading, which is my favorite part. That's what I love about leagues. So I want to get into a league where you almost have to make moves to survive, because every league you're in, there's probably 2 or 3 teams that just sit there and they end up in that like purgatory, like 7 and 8, 8 and 7 every single year. I love those where I'm forced to make a decision. Like I'm in a league right now where I have Travis Kelsey and Tyreek Hill both on 1-year contracts. I can tag them, but for how long, and when do you get off that ride, and when do you
Yeah.
cash in, or when do you keep riding them to first places? It's interesting because I could make or break my team for 3 years based on what I do with just those two players.
That's amazing. Yeah, those kind of things definitely keep you going, keep the wheels turning when it comes to just thoughts on fantasy and having to make moves. And I like that too with a variety of leagues, different styles, kind of keeps you on your toes. I like that you do that. Now, when it comes to creating content, when did you start creating content in fantasy? What inspired you to decide to get involved?
Oh, this was all by accident. None of this was supposed to happen. So the way it started was Scott Fishbowl 10. Scott had tweeted something out about, and I played in the satellites the year before, and he tweeted out about Father's Day. And my son made a card for me that he said, "Show me the best part of your Father's Day." And I tweeted Scott and I showed him the card. It was, really sweet card from my son, and that got me into the fishbowl. And Kevin had like 3 days to prepare. We were going for a draft, and when I tell you, like, I knew the guys that I talked about, I didn't know anybody else in the industry. I had played a couple like side leagues with Jerry Sinclair and some others, and Renshaw, but nothing really major. Like, I didn't know there was this whole community, this whole underground thing. And I get into a league with Matt Kelly, the Podfather, and I'll never forget, we drafted and a video came out of him just trashing everybody in the draft, as he does. So I played him week one, ended up taking him down, and I took his video and recreated it myself, talking trash to him and talking about all the mistakes that he made in the draft that led to him being 0-1. After that, like, I expected my 11 league mates to find it funny. I didn't even know who Matt was or what he would think of it, but that took off. And I went from, I want to say, 40 followers to 2,500 in like 14 hours. The video blew up, and offers started coming in for things I didn't even know existed. I did a show with Bob's Three-Toed Warriors, was my first show with Detroit Beastie. And then I was like, oh, I'll ride the wave. This will be like a week. Like this will be a week of people caring who I am, and then it'll fall off. And I remember I tweeted something else saying, if anyone wants to do a show, I'm interested. And Chase Vernon was the one who reached out, and he said, if you can write a show sheet, I'll do it. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell a show sheet is, but I'm not one to turn down opportunities. So I actually emailed Bob from the show I did. And I said, Bob, what's the show sheet? And he's like, it's that thing I sent you. I'm like, cool. So I just rewrite that and I can make my own show. He's like, yeah, why not? And that spawned a Wednesday show I did with Chase Vernon that lasted 2 years. I wrote the show sheet for 2 consecutive years. From that point forward, I was cutting my grass randomly, just tweeting out, and that became a show. We picked up Cooter Doodle as our co-host, and it kind of spiraled from there. And that week of offers is now going on 3 years of people inviting me to their shows, and it's been it's wild. But I didn't know any of this was even a thing until that video came out with Matt, and all of a sudden Twitter followers came, analyst stuff came, and now I'm on my 4th different brand, and probably this is probably show 700, 800. I still don't know how the heck it happened, man, but it was all out of nowhere and no effort of mine, just people inviting me to kind of do their thing, and that's where we ended up.
That's amazing. That's a cool story. I remember some of the pieces of this, but it's all coming together. That's awesome. What inspired the At Daddy's Home Twitter handle?
That was from the Trash Talk video. So when you look at the Trash Talk video, I mentioned the card that my son made me, and I had told Matt that if you're wondering, am I your daddy now? Yes, I am, and I expect you to make me a card for next Father's Day. And that was how the video ended. And that's where Daddy's Home came from. It was all about me telling Matt Kelly that I'm his daddy, obviously in true Boston Trash Talk fashion. And the handle just kind of stuck. I've toyed with the idea of going back to just my name, which was the original one, and people have told me that they'll flat out revolt. So now it's I think it's for life now. I don't think I have a choice. That's I'm now Daddy's Home, and I don't think I'll ever get away from that handle again.
I love it. That's awesome.
If you're wondering, is Mike Faiella my daddy now? Absolutely, son. But I'm going to take care of you, and all that I ask is you write me an equally sweet Father's Day card next year that I'm going to share to the world and see if I can win another contest. So listen, I hope this doesn't crush your confidence too much, losing to a nobody, because I want to say things are going to get better for you. I really believe that, and I'm proud of you, son.
Now you've met a lot of people in the industry, a lot of people you're real tight with. What are some of your first impressions on some of the people that you're closest to now?
Oh, first impressions. So I think probably the first person I interacted with, or one of the first people that I interacted with outside of shows, was Linda, and she scared the hell out of me, still does, to this day. Well, one of my favorite people. But yeah, she what brought me to being friends with her was just how unapologetically authentic she is. Like, one of those people where you just know that's Linda. Like, I don't even have to look. If someone reads me something that was written, I can tell you it's her, even if you don't say that she's the one that wrote it. And I always love that. Then there was Troy King, obviously, one of my best friends, one of the nicest people, Cooter Doodle, and Chase Vernon. Those were the early stages. And then Ryan and Scott, exactly what you would expect them to be. So those 4 people, so antithesis to me and Linda, are like some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Like, they are those genuine, like, just great, really nice, human beings. So those were probably the ones that stick out. I could give you a list from the old Fantasy Intervention days of like 20 people I started with that you now know have like 50,000, 70,000 followers. But those are the ones that stick out as, I guess, the people I'm drawn to are the ones that are just themselves. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have to wonder if they're on or off. I don't have to wonder if it's an act or if it's a real thing. Like, the people that I've gravitated towards are just those people. Bob Harris is another perfect example of someone who's just that good of a person at all times. Those are always the people that I've gravitated towards. So when you talk about first impressions, and I see that over a period of time, that's, I think, what goes from like a cool first impression to a lasting friendship, is that authenticity.
That's great. No, that's well said for sure. Talk to me about some of the highlights of your journey. Obviously, you've done some stuff like Smack Zone, and you're hanging with Daddy and the DLF work and JWB. Talk to me about what's going on there too.
Sure. Yeah, so highlights, realistically, I'd say the top highlight for me um, was, making the finals in Fishbowl 11 was pretty wild. Like to go all the way and almost take it down was a huge highlight. And then, in terms of creation, it's the podathon. Getting involved in the podathon, like there's nothing more rewarding than that. And now at this point, like I love it. I saw it earlier, absolutely love it. I appreciate that. Being able to put together now the whole show and booking all the talent and working with just the great people like Dave Wright doing all of the sponsorships. I don't know how many people know that Dave Wright does all. He is the guy behind the scenes of the podathon making that all happen. Obviously, Sal, Bob Gilchrist, Steve Rhoda. We have such a great team that we work with over there. But being involved with that is huge. In terms of hanging with Daddy, that was such a fun, like kind of mini series where I got to just talk to my friends. Like DLF gave me carte blanche to do whatever I want. We brought on so many amazing people. I told you, Ryan, we did a 2-hour show just about trading. Me and Tom Everett Scott talked about Boston traffic for about 20 minutes. I'm not sure that was anyone's favorite show, but I enjoyed it. But being able to just bring my friends on and be able to show people their human side was great. And now with JWB, what JWB has given me has been a actually common thread throughout, which is underdog betting. What I've done my entire time, the common thread has always been this dumpster diving, this going for the underdogs. And we started that on the Wednesday show where we would pick people outside of the top 15 and tight ends and quarterbacks and top 20 running backs, wide receivers that would smash. And the only reason we'd get credit is they finished in the top 12. So I carried that from the Wednesday show to then Trophy Smack, and Smack Zone had that. And when we determined that start sits weren't the right fit for Trophy Smack, JWB picked it up in video form. So for 4 years now, I've been doing nothing but picking underdogs and deep diving players because I feel like anybody could figure out to start Christian McCaffrey. Everyone could figure out Patrick Mahomes is probably a decent player, Josh Allen. And I know that gets clicks, like, those season tweets. I know those get clicks and they get engagements. But for me, I actually am just trying to put things out that truly help people, that folks that are in deeper leagues that are pretty much neglected, that I can tell them, hey, this guy's ranked wide receiver 42 right now. He's probably on your waiver wire. You can pick him up for cheap. He's going to finish in the top 12. Just last week, we gave people Jaden Reed, for example, who finished wide receiver 6 when he was ranked 41. Like, those are the calls that we make. It's a dirty business. There's more failures than wins. I hit it about 30%. So I'm sure most people love their 98% hit rates. But what we do is truly meant to help people in deeper leagues. And it's a niche that I think just wasn't being filled at the moment. So that's what I've taken up. And now we're going on year 4 of that. And I think career-wise, probably hitting at 33% on the top 12 plays and hitting about 70% on the start sits with people ranked above them. So not bad for underdog bets overall.
For sure. It's awesome to find a niche like that and to get passionate behind it. People can see, if people are passionate about a subject they're talking about. And so obviously in your case, it's great to know like how much how much you'd enjoy doing that. And you're right. Like everyone can find information about the top picks, but it's that kind of stuff that can really win a league and really change someone's path in a fantasy league. Jaden Reed, like, I just lost my playoff spot because of him, right? And maybe my opponent was listening to you.
Well, I hope not. I hope I didn't lose your playoff spot. But if they were listening, thanks, man. Or whoever was, I appreciate it.
I played the game a long time, so there's always next year, right?
Of course.
So what are you enjoying the most about your experience in the fantasy industry?
I mean, I guess realistically just the friends that we've made, like the conversations you have. The expo is such a highlight for all of us. But that's really it. Like, it's, the football stuff, it's like I would just play on my own and be happy. Like, I could always find leagues, but it's just finding those, just humans that you can chill with and honestly connecting with people that you never thought you would. Like the folks, the people that I have that come to me for advice, from across the pond, from in Australia, like from all over the world, like just being able to interact with those people. And we saw with the Podathon, just such a passionate fan group down in Brazil that we brought on that group to the Podathon, and the excitement around having them on, and the passion that they brought and the happiness they brought. That's just awesome, man. Just to see how this stupid little fake football game of ours have made so many people happy is just amazing to watch.
It's true. No, can you imagine, like, if we didn't have the expo, like, how special has the expo experience been to you?
It's wild. It's probably my favorite, one of my favorite weekends of the year. Like, just to be able to go in and hang out and have that vibe for like 3 straight days, like in this little like bubble that would never exist elsewhere. Like, what can't you say about it that isn't fun? Whether it's karaoke night, whether it's, hanging out at dive bars, whether it's going to Jerseys, like just the thing that Bob Lung has put together that brings all of us together is wild. And, it's that weekend you look forward to. And it's like the second I get on the plane to go home, like how miserable I am, and knowing that it's still a year away until we get to do it again. But yeah, it's a absolute blast. I mean, Jose's Landing is probably my favorite night of all, watching all the talent, just the amazing people that get up there. It's just such a highlight, like just an amazing weekend.
I love it. No, it's true. It's amazing. You have 3 days of all this interaction, but then when you leave, it's like, dang it, I wish I would have talked to that person more, or this or that. Like, it's amazing how much you can pack into that weekend, but still want more. So I'm with you. I'm looking forward to the next one for sure. What inspired your loud shirts? Is that just your style, or because you bring some good energy to the expo?
Oh, that's all LQ. That LQ is the godfather of the loud shirts. I think what had happened was, LQ wears them to breakfast. Like I picked that dude up at 7 a.m, and he is dressed to the nines in loud shirts. We're always joking around. He shows up in a loud shirt. I show up in a tank top. We're totally different humans. And once it hit and we saw LQ doing it, Andy Barron's getting involved, me getting involved, and Troy getting involved, like started this now unofficial, official competition, this complete battle between us that other people have gotten on. Obviously, we see you coming in the loud shirts. Now we have just a swell of people now bringing in Linda with her Jared Goff shirt. Like we've seen some wild ones, but it all started with LQ. He was the starter of it. And it just shows that honestly, me, Troy, and LQ will compete in anything. Whatever, like we will find a way to make it a competition. Like we are at each other all the time. By the way, happy birthday to the man himself, LQ. But that's something we just compete constantly. And it became like, can we be better at LQ in his own thing, which was loud shirts? And honestly, Andy Barons has been besting all of us in that journey. So, shout out to Andy. But it's all stemmed from LQ, and we just kind of rode his coattails and then just made it better than he has across the time. So
I love it. It's always fun, and it is crazy to see, like, again, like how many people have gotten into it. Like when I went that first year, it was Andy talking. We were talking a little bit about it online, and I think someone was like, well, you need to have like a name tag like on your shirt because no one's going to know each other for that first big expo. And so I made a shirt that had my Twitter handle and my Twitter picture all over it, right? And then so then every year after that, I've been like, okay, well, gotta do more and more and more, and then everybody's just going. And yeah, you're right, Andy's bringing it, with the Brad Evans shirts and it's just amazing. Like it's so much fun.
Oh, it's a blast. It's one of the best parts, and we have so much, fun doing it. I think we start trash talking around now. Me and Andy will go back and forth in the DMs about, thoughts we're having, and never actually reveal the thought, but more just hinting that we're going to crush the other person. I don't think I scare him in the least bit. He still kind of terrifies me because what he'll come up with is wild, but it's constant, and it's all the time. Like it is all the time. There was actually just a tweet 2 days ago or 3 days ago where there's a picture of LQ eating a hot dog very awkwardly at the Dodgers game, and LQ being like, that's going to end up on a shirt. And immediately me and Andy are in the comments, and that's it's a year-round thing. We're trying to figure out who can we get on a shirt, who can we embarrass with our shirt while having fun with it, and making sure it's not someone that'll take it seriously or get upset. And it's a year-long thing. I've been trying to plan my shirt for August since I left the expo last August, and hopefully we'll bring some fire next year.
I love it. Can't wait to see it. I'll definitely make sure I'm planning things ahead too. So, what outside of all of this good stuff in fantasy, what are some of your hobbies and activities that you enjoy the most?
I'm a hiker. I think hiking's probably number one for me. I've summited a couple hundred mountains at this point. Like I don't love being when I don't have to be on screen. I don't like technology. I like being out in the open. So I'm either hiking, surfing, snorkeling, swimming, whatever I can get outside with. That's really the big things for me. I've coached youth sports for a while now. My kids are getting a little older, so not as much, but just being outside, being active, doing our thing. But hiking has been the biggest escape for me. It's the easiest way to just kind of turn everything off, get to the top. And I've dropped some pics from the tops of mountains during my time in the fantasy space, but mostly it's to get away from it all and just say, hey, I'm going to just clear my head, get to the top of the world, and just look down on it for a while. So that's been probably the major driver for me.
Nice. Now, what's the last TV show that you binged?
Last TV show I binged. So right now I'm in the middle of Super Pumped, which is the creation of Uber. I think the last one that I binged fully was Love Is Blind. I like my trashy TV shows. So
Yeah, those are good. I love it. Do you have an all-time favorite show, like a TV show?
all-time favorite show is, I guess, the Italian roots. I got to go with The Sopranos. I actually did like the way it ended, unlike other people. So that was the most complete one for me. I'd say is Sopranos. The League is up there as well. It hasn't aged the way that you would like sometimes, but at the time that was, really earth-shattering for us to see people like us on TV. So I think those are the two that stick out most.
I like it. How about a favorite movie?
Favorite movie, probably Finding Forrester with Sean Connery. That was one of my favorites. Yeah, that's bringing me back a little bit. I just used to watch that when I was home by myself, hanging out. So I think I've watched that 50, 60 times.
Nice. How about a favorite sports movie?
It's a tough one. So I looked at this question. I've been going back and forth. I'm just going to give you both of them. It's either the Mighty Ducks or Remember the Titans. Those are the two for me, all-time favorites. If I had to lean in this moment, I'd probably go Mighty Ducks.
Nice. I like two different sides of the spectrum too, so I like that.
Absolutely.
That's good. It's good. How about what was the worst loss as a sports fan that you've experienced?
It had to be the 2007 Super Bowl, on the brink of greatness. Yeah, trying to get the undefeated season and losing to Eli Manning. Not just losing, but losing the way we did. So many things had to go wrong for that to happen, and that was crushing.
Yeah, I know. I get it. How about 2023, the season? Like, who's going to win this Super Bowl? Who's going to win?
It's got to be the Niners, doesn't it? I mean, there's been one consistently strong team throughout, and one team that I think is about as close to injury proof as you're going to get is the 49ers. I mean, there's so many teams that are powered by one or two players, and a little drop off is a concern. The 49ers are just so deep and so talented that I don't see anybody knocking them off. I guess your dark horse pick, I'm going to do this for Troy, even though I don't know I necessarily believe it, but the Dolphins have a shot with just how explosive they are, and just the greatness that is Tyreek Hill gives them a shot if they can somehow just stay out of making stupid mistakes. That's what's been plaguing them, but they're the team in the AFC that I'm looking at. But right now it's the 49ers and Eagles in the NFC, and we saw what the Niners did to them. Sorry, Cowboys fans. I just don't believe that y'all are real. I never will. It's a staple of the Cowboys, but I think the 49ers are the clear-cut favorites this year.
Yeah, no, I can see that. It's painful for me to see it as a Seahawks fan, but it's reality. And there's so many likable people on that team, right? It's hard for me. I struggle, but I love Kittle. Debo won me a championship a couple years ago, and few players in the NFL play with his style, and I mean nobody does. Like he's so fun to watch. It's like great. And Purdy's a good story, and So it's a good guess at this stage. We'll see what happens. Now, obviously, it is fantasy playoff season. Can you tell me, when it comes to championship squads that end up winning it all, like who's going to be most rostered at the quarterback position on a fantasy championship team?
Most roster at the quarterback position. Oh, that's an interesting one. I have to believe it's going to end up being Brock Purdy. I think that where you got Purdy, especially in super flex leagues, like where you got him as your quarterback too, should have allowed you to really put together a solid team. So I think he's going to be the guy that sticks out week in and week out, solid production at such low draft capital. The only other guy I could think of is Dak Prescott and the run that he's on for someone that we had going later. But I'm going to go Purdy as the number one quarterback on championship teams.
All right. Who's going to be the most rostered running back on championship teams?
Christian McCaffrey. He's going to go on a Todd Gurley type run where he basically carries people to championships. Christian McCaffrey, so far and away the best running back that we have in this fantasy season, that he's going to carry people quite a ways. Dark horse would be Devin Achane.
Okay. How about the most rostered wide receiver?
Tyreek Hill.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty easily. I mean, you're going for 2,000 yards just over and over again, assuming that this injury that he just hit isn't a problem. It's going to be Tyreek Hill, and then your dark horse would be, I guess, Brandon Ayuk, if that's dark enough for us.
Okay. How about a tight end? Who's going to be the most rostered tight end in fantasy football?
Most rostered tight end on a championship team in fantasy football. Oh, that's an interesting one because it's such a mess. We don't have really a great choice. I'll tell you what, let's get weird with this one. Hunter Henry.
Okay.
Hunter Henry costs you nothing, and they have no one else to throw to. So I think Hunter Henry's going to win some people you don't expect championships.
Yeah, he definitely got some people in the playoffs with this last week's performance, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so you've mentioned a ton of people, along this podcast or in this podcast that have had an impact on you. Anyone else that you could just mention that like basically are just the foundational people within the industry that have impacted you the most during this journey you've been on?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the first and foremost is Chase Vernon. I don't think people realize how many careers were launched by his selfless acts. I mean, he gave people a platform that they've taken off from. So shout out to Chase as like the person that I look to most as that launching pad for me and for what I've done. Ryan, Eric Dickens, and Ken Moody over at DLF for giving me a shot when I had really just an idea. Were huge for getting me there. And then the people that keep me grounded. I'm not going to name all of them, but it's the happy hour crew. It's the guys from JWB. I don't know which way to point now. We have this group that Dynasty Coach John Arrington put together that they're like the people that keep me grounded. Like there's no way I could ever get too high on anything that I do because they're the ones that will rip me to pieces and talk trash to me in the chat rooms. So they're the group that keeps me kind of on the ground and keeps me laughing all the time. And that's so important. So I think those are kind of the core people. And then obviously Cooter Doodle, we've talked about, I don't know how many times on this show. I can't bring her up enough. She's my kind of Jiminy Cricket, my conscience that keeps me kind of always having fun and always making sure that this is meant to be enjoyable. This is meant to be fun, and it's meant to enhance our lives, not make it worse. So she always is one that keeps me kind of motivated on that track. So
her tweet today, with this
Amazing.
will air next week. Her tweet today with the New York Times and Wordle. Oh
Amazing.
My gosh.
Amazing.
Oh my
She's
gosh.
such a genius. She is amazing.
So she's like, you literally used be anal. Like I was dying.
Unbelievable. Yeah. One of the
So
greatest
good.
videos she's made, and that's saying a lot.
Oh, it says everything. That's pretty good. So yeah, at this time, like, what are you most grateful for in life?
Oh man, just the good people I have, my family, my friends, my dog, all the rescue cats and dogs we've had through here. Like, just I'm blessed, man. Like I have a good life, and I'm just really happy. I have a wonderful partner who keeps me adventuring all the time. She's constantly got me moving. My kids keep me happy, and then just all the friends I have. Like I've just been lucky enough to have found the good people in this world, and it's great that they let me hang out despite being a complete jerk. Like they let me still chill, which is nice. But I've just found some wonderful people, and my family has been just such a foundation of that, of always telling me like you are the company you keep, and always keeping me into hang out with good people. Don't worry about who's going to get you rich or who's going to get you famous. Hang out with good people, and your life will be fine. And that's kind of what I've been able to find here, what I've been able to find in real life, I guess, offline. Like I'm just surrounded by good people who make my life better.
It's awesome. I mean, that's just a beautiful answer. I love it. What advice do you have for people that are looking to get more involved in the fantasy space and follow your path?
Yeah, I think realistically there's two pieces of advice I can give you. Number one, just get involved. Like just start. You'll see the more that you interact, the more opportunities come up. And the second thing is when you're looking for what what you can do, what you can bring, you're going to hear about how there's so many podcasts, how there's so many articles, there's so many YouTube shows, there's so many of everything, and the industry saturated. People are going to give you all of this, but what we don't have is you. You are the only you. So don't try to be the next Matthew Berry. Don't try to be the next JJ Zacharyson. Don't do any of that. Just be uniquely yourself, because when people are looking for something and you're that something, you'll get the spot. You'll get an opportunity. Whereas if they're looking for Matthew Berry, they'll ask Matthew. If they're looking for JJ, they'll ask JJ. So try your best not to emulate. Try your best to just bring yourself. Like come on and talk like you would to your friends. Don't try to make a voice or a persona. Just be yourself and you'll stick out, because we don't have you here yet. So that's the best way to get involved, in my opinion.
Man, I've asked a lot of people that question, and that was good. That was inspirational. I love it. Great message, great point. Absolutely right on point with that. Mike, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to share before we close things out on this episode?
No, man, I think this is great. Like just having a show we can come on and just chill and talk, and instead of having to prepare and have takes is so much fun. And I've loved watching these, and now being a part of it's awesome. So just thanks for having me on, man.
Hey man, it's an honor to have you here. I've been a big fan of what you've been doing. I love your personality and everything you bring to the community. So, where can listeners or viewers find you?
So as we talked about on Twitter, at Daddy's Home FF, that's where you're going to find all my stuff. Weekly on the JWB YouTube channel, you'll find all my sleepers. And if you want to learn how to play Dynasty, I write long form Dynasty strategy articles for newcomers on DLF. So you can check that out at dynastyleaguefootball.com. And sometimes when I'm lucky enough on shows like this, on SiriusXM with Bob Harris, I was just on last week. But yeah, always come to the Twitter. You'll find me there. You're looking for stuff, you need help, just hit me up, hit me at me, hit me in the DMs, whatever you need. That's where I do most of my work.
There we go. Thank you so much for joining me, for hanging with me, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to see what's up next for you, my friend.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.